Get out. This seat is for platinum guests only. 8 words, cut clean through the first-class cabin like a blade. No warning, no hesitation, just a cold command delivered with polished entitlement. Alyssa Beck didn't look up from her phone. Didn't need to. She said it like routine, like policy. Her legs were crossed, Dior toted her feet, and her tone laced with something heavier than disdain. It was dismissal. The man standing beside her rode tall, dark-skinned, dressed simply in a fitted black polo and dark jeans, blinked once. Then he replied, calmly, "This is my seat." She scoffed, loud enough for row 3 to hear. "I seriously doubt that." The boarding pass in his hand read to A. But to Alyssa, that paper meant nothing, not compared to what she saw, or rather, what she chose not to see. Before we go further, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Langston Reed. Back to the moment silence shattered on flight 417. The flight attendant approached, blonde, perfect posture, corporate voice. "Sir, I'll need to verify your seat," she said, already angling her smile toward Alyssa. "Apologies for the confusion, Mum." Langston handed over the pass. Alyssa leaned back, smirking. "Try, coach. You might actually belong there." 3 rows back, a phone rose slowly, red light blinking to life. Someone whispered, "Is this happening right now?" Langston didn't flinch. He looked down once at the pass, then up, not at Alyssa, but at the small silver airline logo etched into the cabin wall. And in that moment, his silence wasn't surrender. It was the sound of every database that was about to change. Langston Reed didn't travel with a team. He didn't need security. No assistant holding an iPad. No entourage trailing behind. Just him, a black man in his early 40s. Built with quiet authority and dressed like he could disappear in any room. That morning, he wore a pressed black polo, dark jeans, and clean gray sneakers. His carry-on was slim, unbranded, and tucked neatly under his seat. There was no logo on his clothes, no name tag, no hint of status except how he moved. Deliberate, calm, measured. Langston wasn't on this flight to show power. He was on it to observe who thought they had it, because this wasn't just a trip. It was a test. North Point Capital, the firm Langston founded and built from the ground up, had recently acquired equity stakes in 3 of the country's major airlines, not for headlines, not for glory, for infrastructure, for leverage, for culture correction. There had been too many reports, too many clips of black passengers being downgraded, delayed, disregarded. Langston didn't need press conferences to fix it. He needed a frontline view, so he booked seat 2A, under his real name, paid in full, no flags, no favors. And now a woman with bleached blonde confidence and a platinum membership sticker on her phone had just told him to find a seat that matched his look. That was the exact word she'd used when boarding began. Look, not class, not boarding group, not section. Look, Langston had heard it before. 22 years ago, he walked into a private lounge with a client pass and got stopped at the espresso bar by a manager who said, "We don't do pickups through here." He'd stood there in a navy suit and tie ready for a billion-dollar pitch, and still got mistaken for someone delivering food. That was the day Langston stopped raising his voice to prove his value, and started building systems no one could deny. This moment on Flight 417, it wasn't new. It was familiar, and precisely why he was seated there now, boarding pass in hand. Surrounded by silence that didn't protect him, it tested him. Behind him, the aisle still bustled, passengers adjusting seats, crew offering pre-takeoff drinks. But row 2 had become a stage. Alyssa sat, arms folded, phone angled just enough to shield her smirk. She'd stopped speaking. But the damage was already done, and the silence now carried something louder than words. Expectation. The crew expected Langston to step back. The cabin expected him to comply. Even the other passengers' eyes darting. Expressions guarded expected the story to go how it always did. The quiet man walks away. But Langston didn't move. He just reached for his tablet, and with one swipe, he opened a single app, Delta V Connect Partner Ops. The screen glowed. A prompt appeared, ready to verify chain of command. Langston didn't hit submit. Not yet. He gave everyone a chance. A moment, a decision. Because in the next part of this flight, the story wouldn't be about who belonged in seat 2A. It would be about why everyone assumed he didn't. Security's en route, the flight attendant whispered into her headset, stepping back just slightly enough to distance herself from Langston, as if proximity implied permission. Langston heard it, chose not to react. He'd learned long ago, the louder the system threatens, the more fragile it truly is. Alyssa leaned back in her seat, victorious. She didn't know who he was. She didn't care. To her, Langston was an inconvenience wrapped in a boarding pass, one that had no business sitting beside her on this flight, let alone in 2A. She took a sip of her sparkling water, lifted her phone, and began typing something. Probably a complaint, maybe a tweet. Then she looked up, stared directly at him, and said under her breath, but loud enough, "You can stop pretending now. We all know that seat doesn't belong to you." Langston didn't blink, but the red light from row 4's phone kept recording. From across the aisle, a voice spoke, tentative, young. I think his ticket scanned green. It came from Mia Jensen, a flight attendant in training. Her hair was still pulled to tight, her shoes to clean. This was her first month on international rotation. She wasn't supposed to speak during conflicts, but she'd seen the scan. She'd seen it clear. And now her voice trembled in the air between protocol and conscience. The senior attendant, Cassidy, the one who dismissed Langston moments earlier, turned sharply to her. "Crew trainees don't speak during escalation," she said, teeth clenched behind a plastic smile. Mia froze, nodded, stepped back. Langston turned slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. He didn't say a word, but the look, steady, unwavering, was enough. She understood. That's when Alyssa stood up. She physically blocked the aisle. "All of this," she said, gesturing to Langston, "is disrupting the cabin. We're about to take off. If you won't move, maybe it's time someone did something." Cassidy moved in again, this time firmer. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one last time. Please step out of the row." Langston handed her the boarding pass again. Cleared digital, verified. Cassidy glanced at it, then looked past it. "This must be an error," she said, waving the pass toward the back. "You should let us sort it out." Langston stayed seated. "I'll wait right here," he said quietly. "Let the system catch up." A murmur passed through the front cabin. A man in one seat shifted uncomfortably. A woman in to be looked away. Then came the voice that broke the wall. "He paid for that seat." Everyone turned. It was a Latina woman in her late 30s, row 3A. Her voice didn't rise, but it carried weight. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shove anyone. He just sat down. "Why is that a problem?" Cassidy's composure cracked. She stepped back. But Alyssa didn't. "You're all being manipulated," she snapped. "He's making a scene to get sympathy, to go viral." Langston turned to her, for the first time fully, and said, "I don't need to go viral. I own the network you're afraid of." Silence. You could hear the air pressure in the vents. Then, footsteps. Two security agents entered the front of the cabin. The air shifted again from tension to confrontation. But Langston was already reaching for his phone. Not to call anyone, just one tap. "Activate Protocol Delta V." A prompt flashed. "Confirm authority. Langston Reed, Executive Class Partner, Level 6. He hit yes. The system logged in, and far above the heads of every passenger, the airline's back end lit up like a Christmas tree. Langston didn't flinch, even as two uniformed airline security officers stepped into the cabin. Even as the tension moved from air to bone, even as Alyssa turned toward them and declared, "That man's refusing to move. He's harassing passengers and causing a delay." Langston simply looked forward, calm. He didn't raise his hand, didn't raise his voice, didn't defend himself. He didn't need to, because power doesn't always enter with noise. Sometimes, it sits still and waits. Sir, the taller officer began, his voice steady but rehearsed. We've been asked to escort you off the aircraft pending seat verification. Please come with us. Langston responded softly. Verification is already underway. I suggest you wait 90 seconds. The officer blinked. What do you mean? Langston turned his phone slightly, showing the active interface. The name at the top, Langston Reed, Exec Class Delta V Network Owner Tier, was impossible to miss. The app flickered once, then a notice slid across the top. Priority verification alert flag, passenger misconduct detected. Ops control now monitoring. Behind him, a voice muttered under their breath. Wait, Ops control. Cassidy stepped forward, sensing her moment slipping. This is going too far. You're not special. You're holding us all hostage over a seat. Langston turned toward her. Finally, eyes steady, voice still low. No, I'm showing you what happens when silence ends. Cassidy opened her mouth, but before she could speak, the flights and cabin PA clicked on. A male voice, smooth and clear. This is the captain speaking. We're experiencing a brief delay while our ground team resolves a system verification. We appreciate your patience. Alyssa spun toward the officers. Why are you removing him? This is insane. One of the officers pulled out his phone, typing fast, likely checking the app now, pinging every internal device. Then, aiding. A second update appeared on Langston's screen. CEO off confirmed. Seat to a register to executive partner. Cabin footage being recorded. Network oversight in progress. That's when the cabin began to shift. Not the plane, the people. Passengers who had sat in silence now leaned in, watching. One woman raised her phone, filming openly now. Row 4's passenger whispered, "He's someone. I don't know who, but he's someone." Langston turned again to the officer, politely. You may stay if you'd like, but this matter is being resolved above your clearance. Mia, the trainee, took a single step forward. Again, she didn't speak, but her eyes flicked to the screen, then to Cassidy, then back to Langston. She saw it. She knew. Alyssa hissed, her voice sharper now. You all are falling for this. Look at him. This is a con. People like him play victim. Always. Langston blinked slowly, then said, measured, You didn't question the seat. You questioned me in it. Cassidy started to respond, but was cut off by another tone. This time, a second flight attendant emerged from the front galley, phone in hand, face pale. She walked straight to Cassidy and whispered, He's real. Cassidy stiffened. What? The woman nodded. Level 6 clearance. Ops control just pinged every crew lead. They're watching live. Cassidy's throat moved, but she said nothing. Langston turned back to his screen. Another prompt appeared. Begin network trace on reporting passenger. Confirm misconduct trigger. He hesitated, not because he was unsure, because he wanted her to know exactly what was about to happen. He looked at Alyssa and asked, with no anger, only truth, Are you sure you want to keep talking? It started with a breath, a quiet, shaky inhale from row 3A. Then a voice, calm, Latina accent, heavy with conviction. He hasn't done a thing wrong. You just don't like how he looks sitting in that seat. Heads turned. A murmur rolled through first class like pressurized wind escaping a sealed cabin. Alyssa froze. Her eyes darted toward the woman, now rising from her seat, a corporate professional, blouse tucked, laptop bag underfoot. I saw the whole thing, the woman continued. He scanned him before I did. No fuss, no questions. Sat down. You're the one who made it a problem. Cassidy stepped forward, trying to reassert control. Ma'am, please stay seated. But it was too late. The silence had cracked. And now, the crowd was shifting. Seat 1C, an older white man in a blazer and gold cufflinks cleared his throat and said, I was skeptical at first, but I've been watching. And frankly, this is profiling, pure and simple. Then a younger black couple in for A and for B raised their phones simultaneously. No hashtags, no yelling, just recording. Eyes wide. Alyssa scoffed, folding her arms tighter. Oh, So now everyone's filming. Great. Another fake outrage video for the internet. Langston didn't move. He stayed seated, still, but his screen lit up again. 5 crew devices detected. Cabin audio now mirrored to compliance review. Passenger watch list trigger initiated. The words meant one thing. Her name was already being logged. And she had no idea. A teenage boy in 3C leaned over to his mother and whispered, "Mom, I Googled him." "What?" she asked, startled. "Langston Reed," he replied, holding up his phone. "He's on Forbes. He owns part of this airline." His mother blinked. Alyssa overheard. "Please," she snapped. "Anyone can put a name on a boarding pass." Langston turned his head, slowly, toward the aisle, then toward the galley. Mia the trainee was still standing near the edge of the curtain. Her hands trembled, but something inside her shifted. A memory. A woman from months ago, a black entrepreneur, had been denied overhead space because a crew member said her bag looked suspicious. Mia had stayed silent then. She regretted it every day since. Now, she stepped forward, voice small, but sure. "I ran his boarding pass. It turned green. It matched seat to A. There was no error." Cassidy turned, eyes flaring. "Mia." But Mia didn't stop. "I also heard what Alyssa said. All of it, from the moment she told him he didn't belong. It was never about the seat. It was about who was in it." A collective gasp swept the cabin. Rhoda had become a courtroom, and the jury wasn't waiting for permission anymore. Langston looked at Mia, really looked at her, not like someone trying to fix the past, but someone finally stepping into the right side of it. He gave her a single, steady nod. She breathed in, held her ground. Cassidy turned back to the officers. "We need to deboard this situation now, before more people get involved." But the taller officer raised a hand. He just received a message. Internal, urgent. His eyes scanned the screen. Then he looked at Langston and quietly asked, "Sir, would you like to proceed with a passenger misconduct escalation?" Langston didn't answer immediately. He turned not toward Alyssa but toward the passengers watching, waiting, and said, "Not yet. Let the room decide what it just saw. Because sometimes, justice doesn't need a gavel. It just needs people to stop pretending they didn't see." "All right, what the hell is going on up here?" The voice boomed before the man even appeared, sharp, impatient, heavy with authority. Derek Langford, 47, base manager for Horizon Air's West Coast division, stepped into the cabin wearing his badge-like armor. His tie was loose, his hair slick with urgency, and his tone broadcast one message: "Put this fire out before it spreads." Cassidy rushed to him, whispering fast, spinning the narrative. Passenger refused to move, holding the plane hostage, making a scene over a misunderstanding. Langston didn't move. Derek turned toward him, didn't greet, didn't question, just pointed. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step off the plane immediately." Langston stayed seated. Derek's brows furrowed. "I don't care what app you're on. I don't care what clearance you claim to have. If you don't move now, we'll escalate this to federal." That word federal landed like a threat, exactly as intended. But Langston had heard worse. He looked up, voice steady. "You just gave the order in front of 16 recording passengers, 1 trainee witness, and a live system trace tied directly to corporate oversight." Derek blinked. "What?" Langston showed the screen again. This time, the app was no longer glowing quietly. It was red. "Incident escalated. Compliance live review, corporate internal ethics board online." Then another ping. "Passenger discrimination report, active witness statements for." Alyssa, still seated nearby, paled. Derek tried to regroup. "This is a misunderstanding." Langston stood, not with rage, not with volume, but with precision. "It became more than a misunderstanding when your lead attendant dismissed my ticket, when your crew tried to erase me from the seat I paid for, when your passenger weaponized her entitlement and your silence let her." The cabin was silent. No one moved. No one dared. Mia stepped closer. Her voice cracked, but she spoke anyway. "He scanned green. I saw it. You can't erase that." Derek turned to her. "Trainees don't." Langston raised a hand. She just did. A woman in 1B whispered, "This is bad." A man in 3C nodded, "This is real." Langston turned to Derek. "Now let me ask you something. How many times has this airline buried complaints like this? How many other passengers walked off your planes humiliated, unheard, and undocumented because no one had the clearance to push back?" Derek looked toward the officers. "Get him off this plane." But the taller officer hesitated. His earpiece buzzed. A pause, then a blink. He turned back, slower now. "Sir, he's not just a passenger." "What do you mean?" The officer's voice dropped an octave. "He's a partner owner, level 6. The entire cabin tensed. Alyssa gasped, "No, that's not possible." Langston turned to her, not with anger, but clarity. "You were so sure of what I couldn't be, you never stopped to ask what I already was." And with that, the tide shifted again, not with shouting, not with force, but with the quiet weight of truth, and the room once filled with tension was now filled with realization. Alyssa Beck was shaking now, not from fear not yet, but from fury. She stood abruptly, knocking over her half-full glass of sparkling water. It splashed onto the floor between seat 2A and B, a silver shimmer of embarrassment no one rushed to clean. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "He's manipulating you all. Can't you see it?" Her voice climbed with every syllable, desperation sharpening into cruelty. "I don't care who he says he is. This is my seat. I earn this. I fly every month. And this man." She stopped short. Too late, because her next words had already formed in her throat, and then they came out, unfiltered. "This man looks like he belongs in the cargo bay, not next to me." Gasps erupted, not exaggerated ones, real ones, raw and involuntary. A woman in 1A muttered, "Oh my God." Someone in row 3 cursed under their breath. Phones lifted higher. One click, then another, then another. Now the cabin was a gallery of silent cameras, all aimed at her. Cassidy didn't speak. Derek didn't move. Even the officers froze. Langston closed his eyes. For just a moment. Not in weariness, but in confirmation. As if a silent chapter had just ended. Then he reopened them and tapped his screen again. "Submit incident. Verbal bias escalate passenger blacklist request attach witness video." The system confirmed. Request linked. Review board standing by. Then, almost softly, Langston said, "You could have just sat down and minded your seat." Alyssa tried to backpedal. "I didn't mean it that way." Langston cut in. "You said exactly what you meant, and you said it loud enough for the world to hear." Then he turned to Derek. "So now I'll say mine." He raised his voice just enough not to shout, but to carry. "As of this moment, I am formally submitting a request to the Horizon Air Compliance Council to initiate a lifetime ban on passenger Alyssa Beck across all partner airlines. Her words, her behavior, and her escalation are in violation of FAA bias protocols and corporate ethics guidelines." Alyssa's mouth opened, closed. "No, you can't do that. You don't have that authority." Langston didn't blink. "I do." Derek tried to interrupt, but the taller officer stopped him. "I just got confirmation from corporate," he said. "Level 6 has it right. It's already processing." Alyssa turned to Cassidy to stop him, say something. But Cassidy was frozen, because she wasn't watching Langston anymore. She was staring at the row of witnesses, the sea of phones, the eyes. The quiet wrath now aimed at her too. A few seconds passed in thick silence. Then the loudspeaker clicked again. This time, a new voice. Stern female. "Corporate. This is corporate oversight. We are now monitoring this cabin. All crew members are instructed to comply with internal directives. All actions are under live review." Mia covered her mouth. She whispered, "They're here." Langston turned to Alyssa one final time. "You don't get to speak like that and walk away anymore." And with that, her fate was sealed. Not with a scream, not with a scene, but with a single, irreversible line logged into the system. Passenger ban, under review severity, permanent. And this time the whole plane saw it happen. Langston didn't raise his voice. He raised his phone. The same device they dismissed minutes ago as just another prop in a passenger's tantrum. He tapped the screen once, then again, A dial tone clicked into place, crisp, steady, intentional. The cabin hushed like someone had cut the air. Then a voice answered. "Read protocol." "This is Jordan." Langston replied, even-toned. "Activate Delta V trace. Full documentation. Passenger misconduct submitted. Now escalate to partner tier review." Jordan's voice didn't flinch. "Understood. Ban request logged. Corporate is watching live. FAA compliance has been alerted." Derek stepped forward, eyes wide. "Okay, look, this has gone far enough. You're pulling corporate strings over a seating dispute." Langston turned, slow and surgical. "This isn't about a seat. It never was. It's about every second you hesitated to verify a truth that was right in front of you." Jordan's voice came through again. "Langston, do you want to initiate full partner review of Horizon Air's front-end crew behavior metrics for this flight class?" A pause. Langston looked at Cassidy, at Derek, at the sweat now glistening on Alyssa's temple. Then, "Yes. Begin audit. Flag all crew devices that failed to report bias." Cassidy gasped, "You can't," but she stopped herself, because she could feel it now. The system wasn't on their side anymore. It was on his. The captain stepped out from the cockpit, an older man, white, with calm but heavy eyes. He looked at the scene, the cluster of crew, the frozen passenger in seat-to-be, the sea of phones recording. Then he looked at Langston, and without hesitation, he said, "Mr. Reed, would you prefer to remain on this flight?" Langston nodded once. "I would. The issue is no longer mine." The captain turned to Derek, voice cold absolute. "Mr. Langford, you'll be stepping off now, and your access badge will remain with the first officer. Compliance has already been notified." Derek stammered, "I had just got here. I was trying to contain it." The captain didn't raise his tone, but his words cut anyway. "You didn't contain anything. You exposed it." Jordan's voice returned. "Langston, Alyssa Beck's ban is being finalized. We've also flagged Cassidy's behavior under Protocol 3B. Do you want to submit immediate temporary suspension?" Langston hesitated, then looked to Mia, still standing there, still steady, still silent, but braver than all of them. He spoke into the call. "Suspend Cassidy's access immediately, and elevate Mia Jensen to temporary lead on this cabin for the duration of flight." Mia gasped. Cassidy turned, pale. "You can't, just not even certified yet." Langston didn't look at her. He looked at Mia. "You stood when others folded. That's what leadership looks like." Jordan confirmed. "Updating now. Mia Jensen has full clearance for in-flight management." Passengers started clapping. Not thunderous, not performative. Measured, intentional. Because they knew what they'd just witnessed. Not a meltdown, a transfer of power. And Langston Reed hadn't moved from his seat to get it. He'd always had it. He just waited for the system to catch up. The applause faded, not into silence, but into a collective stillness. Mia was frozen, not from fear, from awe. She'd gone from trainee to lead in a single breath. And not because someone handed her a title, but because she stood when it mattered. And the man who gave it to her, now, he finally rose. Langston Reed stood in the narrow aisle of Flight 417, composed as ever, but no longer anonymous. He looked to the front of the cabin, where Cassidy stood slack-jawed, where Derek had already begun packing his briefcase with shaky hands, and where Alyssa sat trembling into be, as if proximity to him was radioactive now. Then he spoke, not louder, just clearer. "My name is Langston Reed. I am the founder and CEO of North Point Capital. We own 21% of Horizon Air's equity, including this fleet." Gasps swept through the cabin. Real ones. One passenger actually choked on his water. Another whispered, "He owns the airline." Langston continued, 2 years ago, after multiple reports of biased treatment, I made the decision not to launch a PR campaign, not to hold a press conference, but to watch, to witness." He glanced at Alyssa, then at Cassidy. "And today, I didn't witness a mistake. I witnessed a pattern. Phones were still up, but now, some passengers lowered theirs not out of the centerist, but respect. because something bigger was unfolding. Langston looked around, at the people who had spoken up, at Mia, at the teenage boy who had Googled him, at the woman in 3A who stood first. You weren't just bystanders, you were the firewall between me and erasure. He paused, then, with more weight, and I wasn't the only one they tried to erase. The room exhaled as if it had been holding its breath. Langston walked slowly toward the front. As he passed Cassidy, her mouth quivered. I didn't know. He stopped, met her eyes. You didn't care to. He continued. At the galley, he faced Derek, now pale, holding his ID in one hand and a stack of denial in the other. Langston didn't raise his hand. He just said, this flight was a test. You failed it. He turned back to the cabin. Let today be the last time someone looks at a passenger and decides worth based on a face, not a fact. Mia stepped forward now, badge freshly updated on her device. She stood beside him. I'll make sure of it, she said. Langston nodded. You already have. Then he returned to 2A, the seat they tried to take, and sat down. This time, no one questioned it. Cassidy staggered back a half step, like she'd just been slapped not by a hand, but by a truth she couldn't outpace. She opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out. Her hands moved as if searching for a script, but there was none, not anymore. The page had been torn, burned, rewritten by reality, and it didn't have a place for her name. Behind her, Derek lowered his eyes. The man who barked orders, who burst onto the plane to restore order, was now folding into himself like bad paper in the rain. He reached for his phone, then thought better of it. Reached for his badge, clutched it like it might still protect him, then looked toward the front, where the captain stood not moving, not smiling, watching. Alyssa Beck. She didn't even try to argue. She stared straight ahead, frozen. The phone once clutched in her hand was now limp in her lap. Her fingers trembled over the screen, maybe to delete something, maybe to send one last message before the system locked her out. A single tone chirped from Langston's phone. He glanced at it, then turned the screen slightly, letting the cabin catch a glimpse of the message now displayed. Passenger status, ban confirmed. Name, Alyssa Beck. Ban effective, immediate. Scope, all partner airlines. Reason, bias, verbal misconduct, disruption. Another gasp rippled through the seats. A young black woman in 4D whispered, she really got banned just like that. Mia, still standing near Langston's seat, nodded. She earned it. And now, something shifted in the cabin. Not fear, not anger, but relief. The weight of years of unspoken humiliations, of brushed-off incidents, of people told you're overreacting was cracking. Passengers began speaking. Low, soft, brave. I had a friend kicked off a plane for boarding too confidently. Someone murmured from 5A. They made my wife cry because her name didn't match the ticket, said another. And then came the applause. This time, louder, full, a recognition not just of Langston, but of what had been endured and what had finally been named. Derek turned to the captain, desperate now. I wasn't even involved in the original call. The captain raised a hand. I've already filed the report. You'll be escorted off when we land. Cassidy's voice cracked. I didn't mean to. Langston finally looked at her, voice steady. Absolute. You didn't need to mean it. You just needed to see it. And you chose not to. Mia stepped forward, now holding a printed copy of the updated flight manifest. She walked it to Langston, like an officer delivering formal papers. He accepted it, scanned it, then gave it back with a quiet nod. And as Cassidy backed toward the galley, as Derek slumped into the wall, as Alyssa finally bowed her head, the cabin exhaled. Together. Because power hadn't shouted. It had simply arrived and refused to leave. Langston sat, his hands resting lightly on the armrest of 2A. The seat that had caused such chaos now silent. He didn't speak right away. He let the silence linger. Because silence, when earned, carries more weight than 1,000 words shouted in anger. Then, without looking up, he tapped his screen again. Execute. Horizon Crew Disciplinary Protocol Level 6 Override. A second later, A message appeared on Cassidy's device. She blinked, breath catching in her throat. Cassidy Reynolds. Position, flight service lead. Status, immediate suspension. Access, revoked. Pending review by Internal Ethics Board. Her ID badge blinked red. The screen on the flight manifest changed. Her name grayed out. She turned to Langston, panic finally creeping into her voice. I have a family. This job. Langston didn't interrupt, but he did speak. So did every passenger you ever made feel smaller. On every flight you chose to enforce power before fairness. She stepped back, nothing left to say. Derek's turn came next. His phone buzzed. He checked it, then dropped it. The message was short. Derek Langford. Title, Regional Manager. Outcome, Administrative Leave Indefinite. Reason, Protocol Interference, Bias Tolerance, Failure to De-escalate. He turned to the captain. I can appeal this, right? The captain didn't answer. Langston did. You can try. Then a final tap. Confirm band sync. Alyssa Bet partner carriers. Confirmed. Access denied. All loyalty points revoked. Status cleared. Blocklist shared with federal oversight. Alyssa looked like she might faint. Tears welled in her eyes, not from remorse, but disbelief. This isn't fair. You're ruining my reputation. Langston leaned forward, voice low and even. No. You ruined it the moment you opened your mouth. I'm just making sure you never do it at 35,000 feet again. A beat, then the final strike. And from this moment on, if you're caught attempting to book with any airline affiliated with Horizon, your ticket will be denied before payment clears. She whispered, You're serious. Langston looked her in the eye. You blocked a man's seat, now the sky blocks yours. Gasps rippled again, not just for the words, but the finality of them. Mia stepped forward. Sir, she said, compliance team just pinged. They've confirmed. All changes are live across the system. Langston nodded once. Good. Then he turned back to the cabin. To the passengers who had watched this unfold, some in awe, others in quiet vindication. If anyone else would like to step forward with an official report of mistreatment on this, or any other Horizon flight, your statement will be reviewed by me, personally. Hands went up, slowly, bravely, and Langston just listened. Because punishment isn't the end. It's the beginning of correction. And justice, real justice, isn't loud. It's final. Langston leaned back into his seat. No one argued now. No one questioned. No one dared. Outside the cabin window, the tarmac glowed under morning sun. Planes taxied in slow, obedient patterns. But inside this aircraft, something far greater had shifted. Not altitude, authority. A new voice came through the intercom. Clear, grounded. This is your captain. We'll be departing shortly. We'd like to thank all passengers for their patience, especially our executive partner on board, Mr. Langston Reed. The cabin clapped again. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to mark the moment. Langston didn't wave, didn't smile. He simply gave a nod. Alyssa was gone, escorted out by security, quietly, through the front ramp. No screaming, no spectacle, just consequence. Cassidy followed next, badge dark, eyes hollow. Derek trailed behind her, still dialing someone who wouldn't answer. Langston closed his eyes briefly and remembered Charlotte, 1998, Sunday best. A hotel lobby. Him at 16. Denied entry while families walked past clutching reservation papers tighter than dignity. He remembered the doorman's face, the one that smirked and said, You sure you're in the right place? And now, he was. The right place. The right seat. The one they'd tried to take not because of a mistake, but because of a mindset. Langston opened his eyes. Looked to Mia, still steady near the galley. Hold that space, he told her. She nodded, tears starting to rise, not from sadness, from pride. The engines hummed beneath them. The captain signaled for takeoff. Langston buckled in, and before the wheels left the ground, he looked straight ahead, voice low, but audible to those nearby. I didn't need to raise my voice. I built one. A final ping lit up on his screen. An internal message from Horizon's executive board. Incident resolved. Authority confirmed. legacy established. He turned the phone face down, folded his hands, and as the aircraft lifted into the sky steady, unshaken Langston Reed sat anchored in the very seat built to erase him, and made it undeniable. I don't need to go viral. I am what happens after the video ends. Fade to black.